side. I have been mostly on the B2B side. So I think we both have a well-rounded profile so that we can give you a complete picture of what PM looks like in different industries. Currently, I work as a principal product manager at Audible Magic, which is essentially the intermediary between social media and the music industry. We look at attribution and licenses for user-generated content. So essentially, really trying to ensure that musicians get paid who are contributing to the music that we share on all of the files and all of the things that we share on social media. So with that, let's just dive into product management. What is product management? Any quick responses from anyone as to what product management is like? And if you need more than 5 words, then maybe it's too long only. So what is product management? I'm looking for responses. You can just unmute and you can just no, nobody. All right, no worries. We can look for more interaction as we build into the presentation. So, from my perspective, Bollywood was one of the first places which caught on future trends. Was one of the first places to catch on to the future trend. Looking at my job and the way it has evolved, I really feel one of the best ways to summarize product manager is the Hindi movie Bawarchi. I'm not sure how many of you have seen, especially because it belongs to a different genre of movies altogether. But for those of you who have seen it, I think product manager can accurately be summarized as Rajesh Khanna's role, which is Bawarchi in product management. And the entire institution that he becomes a product manager in is a household which is completely broken, and he's just fixing different things with the repertoire of different skills that he has, talking to everybody in different languages. Different languages in the sense, language that they understand. So if you're a singer, he will talk to you about music. If you are a person who is old and anxious, he will talk to you about that. But essentially, he's just going around, trying to make the entire system work. And that's what a product manager essentially is. When we look at products, the definition of a product may change significantly across B2B, B2C, startups, depending on where the organization is, just like product market fit. But essentially, a product manager is a cog in the entire wheel that ensures that the entire system is running. So just the word cloud here. If we have to focus on a few areas, there are different ways, and there's actually a lot of ambiguity on what product management is all about. And here, if you see, the biggest word that really makes all of the things come together is ownership. When you're a product manager, whatever product you have, whether you are completely owning the entire product or you're owning a functional part of it, the core part of it is the ownership. Like, you really own the product. You really ensure that whatever slips may be there, you are there to pick up slack. Whatever anticipation needs to be built in building the product, you are providing the visibility and the torchlight to the entire team for future. And of course, there are a lot of supplemental skills and different realms of product management as well. But ownership is the central part of it. Of course, complemented with structure, communication, prioritization, customer advocacy, and depending on the situation, whether it's hardware, software. I just want to take a quick pause here and field any questions that you may have already, like preemptive questions, before we dive any deeper. So, does anyone have any burning questions that they like, even in the content that we've discussed so far, commentary on the Bollywood reference or the overall perspective of product management? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, let's keep moving, and I'm sure these questions will keep rolling in.
I think there's a question coming in from Dinesh, probably. I think.
Oh, is it? So because I'm sharing my screen, I'm not able to read any of the chat. So, if there are any questions,
Hello, Chati and Akshay. My name is Dinesh and I'm a MTech analyst student in the Department of MEMS. And my question is that if there is a player in the market and you are new in the market, then how to entry in the market? Like suppose for the example in the shoe market there is a Adidas in the market and Nike want to enter the market Indian market. So how to do the entry in the market? Like Nike products are the more costly and Indian are not like they are just not loyal to the product. They want a good quality in the cheap price. So how to enter in the market?
That's a good question. It goes really zoomed into a very specific niche, problem statement. The way I like to, and you may chime in as well. The way I like to first think about it is why does Nike want to enter into the market, right? Or why does any player want to enter into the market? So the why needs to really be answered before any steps are taken to enter the market, because those reasons define what the objective is, and then the path that follows, needs to be laid out such that it fulfills the objective. Some of the objectives may be, access to a new customer segment or access to a new revenue channel, in which case you have done standard, analysis sort of thing or projections, which make you believe that it's going to be a very hot selling product in the future. Or, there may be 10 different reasons, but you never enter a market just for the sake of entering a market, right? Like you have to really understand, how does this complement my current strategy of products? How does this, what value can I bring to the market? How am I differentiated from my competition? And what's really the unique value proposition that I bring? Because unless these questions are answered, you're not differentiated enough for the customer to really notice you and then adopt you, right? So it always starts with the why. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
And maybe Akshay can add a little bit to more to what you said, right? So I think if you guys have been preparing for consulting, I think it is a typical framework for answering the questions on should company enter a market or not. And there are multiple ways to go about answering the question, right? But a very high level framework that I have used to figure out whether the company should enter a market or not is number one, like what are some of the macro trends, right? And within the macro trends, I'll be looking at, hey, like let's say if I want to enter in the athleisure industry, I want to sell new leggings and sports apparel, right? So I'll be looking at, hey, what are the market trends like? Who are my customers? What are they willing to pay for this product? Who are the competitors in this market? For example, there is Nike. Who else? There is Lululemon. Like, who else are my competitors? What geography do I want to focus on? Where are customers really into fitness industry, for example? Right? So I would look at some of the macro trends. Then I would go and assess my own product, right? Okay, what is something unique about our product? How can we differentiate it? For example, are we using environmentally sustainable materials to produce these leggings? Let's see if I'm Amazon, I'll be looking at, hey, do I have synergies with my other business units? For example, like as Amazon, I would be pretty strong in operations. And okay, like so there is synergy, there is an existing distribution warehousing system, let's say in a specific geography, there is operations set up. So I'll look at all of the synergy so that it's easier for me to distribute it. So that's number two. And the third bucket is I would look at a miscellaneous bucket under which I would be looking at, hey, are there any regulations that I should be looking at? Are there any government standards with respect to manufacturing of clothes and things like that? So miscellaneous bucket in general, regulation and anything else, regulation, privacy-related stuff, any government-related stuff. So just summarizing, I would approach it through a three-bucket framework, which is just the macro trends, the unique product trends, and then the miscellaneous bucket trends, just to analyze whether, let's say, a specific company like Amazon should enter a specific market like athleisure in a specific geography. With that, Akshay, let's get back into the presentation and we can discuss more later.
Perfect. So you have two versions. You have the elevator pitch, which is the 15-second version, and you have slightly longer framework version of answering that question too. So Good job, Swati, detailing out, all of this, or fleshing out on the details. Right. Let's get into, the next part, which is, the PM focus areas. So essentially, if you see on the right, PM really sits at the heart of different organizational departments, so engineering, legal, sales, marketing, and UX and design. Typically, if you have to see the time across, or rough ballpark of time spent across these different departments, so 40% at least of your time goes with engineering, and then the remaining time, maybe 30% across all of the other, legal, sales, marketing, and UX design, and then 30% with the customer. But these are very rough ballparks, and these numbers can change, significantly with the different jobs, that are available, because each company defines PM very uniquely. But what remains constant across all of these functions is the process, which is, discovery, strategy and design, building, and iterating. These are the 4 parts through which you build any product. So I think it's the time to start, or to get slightly deeper, even riffing off the response that Swati gave us to what's the development process like, and why, for example, if you have to, enter a new market, what would that process look like, and what does PM have to do across the entire process? So looking at the entire product development process, and apologize because it's like a text-heavy slide, but I'll try to summarize it, in a certain manner. It all starts from discovery. So the question that you asked is, should we enter a new market? The root of the entire question lies on discovery. So what really needs to happen is we need, as in product management, we don't just make gut decisions. We need customer research, and we need data, to really make these decisions about customer pain points and customer needs, and as to whether it's even a worthy problem that we are trying to solve. Can we even break even or not? There are, of course, it's not just the organization which is, making this product that is involved, but also their partner organizations. It's at this time that, rough timelines are established. Suppose I have to make a shoe. Suppose I'm just a, bootstrapped startup in India. How long will it take for me to make a shoe that is equivalent in quality and design with a Nike shoe? It might take many, many decades of research, right? So how high is the barrier to entry? And of course, depending on the organization, these responses may differ significantly, which also leads into, the next few processes. So once the discovery is, made, and once it is established that there is some unique value that I can provide through this product, in the entire market, there are different. You're basically committing and putting your, flag in the ground and saying, yes, I am going to start developing this product. And when I'm saying committing, it means the engineering team has committed to it, the business team has committed to it, and you all have huddled together, and you're just like, yep, let's make this happen. Once that happens, you need to define what the scope of the MVP is. What budget are you looking at? What percentage of the engineering needs do you need to dedicate for, making this product? And also, what does V1 of the product look like? What is it that we're really trying to ship out at the time of release, right? Once we have done the scoping, we just basically keep going on this multiple iterative loops. And iterative development is a very important concept for all of product management and tech development in general. So there are different frameworks, which is Agile, or Scrum or Kanban, which you can use as an engineering team to really focus on, how to quickly build products. And if it's a hardware product, it's basically rapid prototyping and stuff like that, which really essentially ensure that you can first quickly broadly, get to the, broader aspects of the product, and then you can work on the finer aspects of the product, in time. You keep prioritizing as to what's most urgent, and then you basically keep repeating this entire cycle. And while you're developing, you also prepare for the rest of the organization to prepare to sell this product. So sales training is a very important part of it. At this time, you have also matured your conversations with some of the customers, and hopefully In most cases, there is one customer who's really passionate about what you're trying to build because it completely aligns with what they want and what their need or pain point is. And this is in B2B, it may be in another organization, or in B2C, it may just be through research, validated customer need or pain point that you're looking at. Then it comes to stage of pilot. At the stage of pilot, your product is roughly made up, but it's not yet ready for the market because there are lots of edges to the product which need to be smoothened out, which happen with an early field trial or beta testing with a specific customer, where they really look at the expectation that's set that this product will not be perfect when it comes into their hands, but they get some sort of incentives like a freebie or something like that, or Google does this with respect to individual customers where it pays customers to come and participate in surveys, and a lot of companies do that as well. But essentially, you're looking for feedback, customer feedback, to really ensure that what you have done in reality, it makes some difference into the customer's life. Right? In the pilot phase is where you get into the documentation of what a case study is, and you really try to walk with the first few customers through the entire process of onboarding, setting up the entire product, and also make the release docs and some marketing collateral such as the pricing, some sheets. In B2B world, you do have lots of documentation, technical documentation, as well as business documentation, which enables the entire ecosystem to adopt the product very seamlessly. And once that entire phase is over, that's the pilot phase, that's when you get ready for a more bigger launch, which is a public event sort of a thing, which may be followed by individual road shows, in different geographies, or the terminology is called rolling thunders, when you really try to get into specific geographies, and then you have event after event. Like I'm sure a lot of you must be following. There's a big tech event every year that happens, which is called IES in Vegas, and a lot of new products are showcased there. So you really want to showcase any new product that you have, and then at the stage of launch, you really try to get into the next phase of go-to-market planning, whether it is through different channel partners, or whether it is through individual relationships with other organizations where you contract out the entire distribution of your product, or you may just have, if you're a mature company, you do that yourself as well. Post-launch, as soon as your first iteration of the product is out first version of the product is out in the market, the product manager typically starts wearing the hat for V2 already. You start planning for the second version of the product, right? So if you have an iPhone, like when does the new iPhone start development? The next iPhone, even after this year's launch of the iPhone 12, we have already started. The company must have already started the development of the next version of iPhone, right? Trying to get ideas on that. But post-launch, the product manager also is really responsible for scaling of the product and adoption of the product in different markets, and adoption of the product with respect to different customers. So essentially, the product manager is wearing the growth hacker hat. So if you see, there is no single part of this entire cycle where you need the same skills across different stages. You do need different skills across all of these stages, and you need to a product manager definitely needs to keep on improvising to really ensure that they're delivering what is needed in the market, not what they have to offer to get done. So this was a very heavy slide, and I want to pause again to ensure that I can field some of the questions that you may have. So shoot if you have any right now.
Hey, Akshay. So I've been monitoring the chat box. So I can take some of the questions. Thanks. I think this is a very detailed slide, and people have lots of questions. I think just to set some more context, so there are different types of products, right? I think we talked about this B2B, which are enterprise products. There are B2C, which are consumer-facing products like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and then there are hardware products like Apple, for example, Apple Watch. And then there are software products like WhatsApp, right? And this cycle varies slightly depending on which product you're building, right? So, but the overall process is first you identify a problem, then you define your MVP, right? And I think there was a question on like what is MVP. So I think someone clarified that MVP is minimum viable product. But what does that mean, right? So think about this. So you are a product team, you have engineering resources, you have design resources, but no one has unlimited resources, right? Like so you have a hypothesis that you may want to solve a specific problem. You've spoken to a few customers and you think it's a good problem to solve, but of course you don't have infinite resources. So when you don't have infinite resources, that's when MVP helps you out. MVP is basically the bare bones or the minimum product that you as a team should build along with your design, engineering, research, sales, whatnot. Like it may not be very beautiful. It should be just bare minimum functional prototype or product that you can put in front of your customers and be like, hey, do you like this? Is it adding value to you? Will you be paying for it, right? So you're trying to test your hypothesis very quickly by putting it in the hands of the product. And that's why it's called minimum viable product, because you don't want to put a lot of resources, a lot of fluff into it for validating your hypothesis because you're wasting your resources by doing that.
Just to quickly summarize, Swati, one way to think about MVP is it's a threadbare skeleton product which will just get you to the finish line and satisfy the customer's need or pain point. Right? It's just what's the minimum required to get this customer happy. Swati, you can go ahead. That's
cool, awesome. And guys, like if there are more questions on MVP, like feel free to ask, because that's something that if you're getting into product management, you should absolutely know, because that's the quickest way to test your hypothesis without spending a lot of resources. So we can come back to it. Feel free to ping on the chat.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, go for it, Abdul.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask that if the MVP is the product which is in the very initial stage, then with very limited resources, because obviously in the initial stage. But then, how do we justify whether the customer who has so many products, from the competitors, how do we make sure that the customer does not feel that okay, the product is kind of average?
Yeah. So I think the one way we do this at Amazon is by setting really early expectations. Right? So customers also know that, hey, there are brand new products, there are mature products. This is something that is just trying to be, this is a startup, like a 10-person startup that is trying to test out something, right? So you select a few customers who you think will be, who you think will really value the product, and you set the expectations. Hey, like we're launching this product, it's in the bare minimum development phase. Hey, can we get some early feedback on this? What do you like about this? What do you not like about this? Will you pay for this, right? So you basically set the expectations, and customers also know that, hey, there are all sorts of companies. There are large companies like Amazon and Facebook. There are small to medium-sized companies, and there are like really small Series A, Series B, not even let's say Series A, Series B, like the pre-series startups. So I think it's just by being upfront and setting those expectations, and know that your customers most likely know that and will understand you.
Another caveat to that, taking a step back, is so on your comment, I was not able to see what the name was. I think it was Abdul, but like who is the customer is really essential. And I think it's an assumption that there are like already so many products in the market which are like, so what is different about you, right? So from that perspective, like there is always, and this is a psychological thing, right? Like till we are dissatisfied in our life, there will be some new product that can be sold to the customer. So like essentially it goes back to, what is the like pain point? So just to make this real, a pain point for a customer may be that, even the current software that I have, and this is for a B2C customer, the current software that I have, which has a specific, use case for me, does not, I still feel lazy to use it for everything, right? And, or all the time. And it's just annoying me in a certain way, right? So there is certain need or pain point. and in which case we can unbundle some of the other, services. So, like there was a beautiful slide at one point which I saw, which was Craigslist, which was a list of all of the different services available in the market and how basically it was unbundled, and you found companies like Airbnb, Uber, Tinder. There were so many companies that came out which were just different tabs on Craigslist. So it depends on, like, at every stage the customer will have some unmet needs and a pain point which are not really addressed by the market, and that's where you really have to come in and say, do I have the insight into what customers need right now? Go ahead, Swati.
Cool.
If you have any other questions.
Yeah. So I think I see a question on the product instinct versus the usage of data. I think it's a great question. I am quite analytical, and I'm sure most of you guys are as well. And there is a natural inclination towards using the data for making all of the decisions. Yes, data is quite useful, right? You as a PM, product management is a heavy cross-functional role, as Akshay was saying. Marketing, data science, engineering, product designers, and everyone. I mean, sales, like you name it, you'll work with. If you're a PM, you'll work with those. You'll most likely work with those teams. But the point being here, I work a lot with my data science team to get some new dashboards made, and then I analyze if my product is growing or not growing, etc. And I make some calls on the roadmap, or I make some calls on prioritization. Hey, what should the engineering build next? But then I have learned through my mistakes and my experiences that data can be misleading, right? Because data doesn't tell you the why behind it. The why behind it comes from interviewing customers, from understanding what their motivations are. So I guess the key takeaway I wanted to share with you guys is that data along with qualitative research study. What is qualitative research study? Qualitative research study is nothing but doing customer interviews, running customer surveys, and understanding, hey, why do you like this? Why do you not like this? I think that's very important, and I would want you guys to know that both data, which is referred to as quantitative, and qualitative, the usability research studies, the customer surveys, are equally important for making calls on prioritization and driving decisions. Cool. I think let's just take one more question, Akshay, and then we can move on to the next section. Let's see. Akshay, do you want to take this question? It's about, I think there's a question on engineering is making of the product and design is the idea of the product. Is my understanding correct? Oh, Akshay, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, I think the idea is roughly in the right ballpark. So if you see the different stages of product management, it's why, what, and how. Why is basically establishing the need of the entire product. What is essentially how we are going to address that need, and how is basically the really weeds of it as to what are the plumbing work required for this entire big building to come up to really have this customer need addressed. So why is basically customer research aligning with the company mission. The what and the how, and that is the design aspect of it, the why and the what. The what and the how is more about the engineering part of it and engineering stakeholders. So I hope that answers the question. There are a couple of other questions too. Krishi asked a question on while in pilot, what exactly has to be done to sell our products in the nearby localities or give trials in a sense. So Krishi, like this question, I'm assuming they are asking from the perspective of, getting a product to local markets. So it all depends, right? And I'll get to that slide in a little bit where the scale of a company at which you're operating. So it could either be a multinational corporation or a big corporation, or it could be a bootstrap startup, which is addressing a very local need. So if you're looking for a large organization like Facebook or a WhatsApp, a product manager in WhatsApp has to address the needs of almost 3 billion users, right? Because that's the reach of WhatsApp. Versus a new product which is just a kirana wala shop, like a software for your local kirana wala shop, and a network of the distribution, network of such shops. That's a very local need. So it all depends on what are you doing, but essentially in every case there is a specific customer. And before the launch, the core idea is before you bring the product to the market, test it with a small group such that you really get the feedback from the customer. There's another question on it's a perfect segue actually, which is what's your day-to-day activities as a PM? So let's get back to that, and I'll get to the other questions as well in a little bit. Day in the life of a product manager. Actually, after a text-heavy slide, it's good to have a picture slide. So here, if you see, there are different activities that a product manager can really or is expected to perform on a daily basis. If you are already in a mature product where the customers are raising issues, bugs, queries, or things are falling behind schedule, or there is conflict in the team, the product manager is expected to be the most mature person in the organization, and you're expected to firefight, really get different stakeholders together, align on what needs to be done. Prioritization is a huge firefighting exercise. Actually, prioritization is more of the cockfight which we see on the bottom right, because you really have to align with different people who have different needs, and everyone is contributing towards the roadmap and the vision of the entire company. But essentially, you have to firefight in some cases. You really have to have standoffs with people and challenge the assumptions and that too without having a civil discussion and a civil debate, right? The third is really getting stakeholders together, communicating to the higher management on what's the progress of the entire product like, and really getting together for release planning and anchoring that process towards some of the less glorified tasks. So on the top right, like you basically sometimes also have to be the janitor of the organization. So there's a joke which goes around in a lot of startups that you may be the CEO of a startup, but the CEO of a startup typically also has to be the person who's cleaning up the entire office, and locking the doors before he goes. And this is before you achieve scale, right? And of course, in all of this, there's also the documentation part of it, really ensuring that there is enough documentation, to really assist the end customer in navigating the whole process on their own, rather than having constant manual, touch points to the organization. But I think the most important part of all of this is in really keeping the team happy and the morale high, because this is a role, as I was referencing to the movie Bawarchi earlier, this is a role which really can only come to life if the stakeholders that are involved are happy and motivated. So there is an implicit leadership, responsibility given to the product managers themselves. A lot of times that just happens when you get samosas for everyone in the office, or you get donuts for everyone in the office. And not because you have some ulterior motive, but just because you want people to feel happy, contented, and heard, while in the entire process. So, again, if we have to summarize the last slide and this slide, the roles and responsibilities are across, there's so many different departments where you have to synchronize. There's the leadership aspect of it, there's a technical aspect of it, and then there's a customer advocacy aspect of it. And you really have to ensure that you play this balancing act to have the entire ecosystem charged and productive at all times. Any questions for that? I'll just move to the last section before handing it over to Swati. And this is, again, a slightly text-heavy slide, but essentially laying out the differences between mature corporations and startups, right? So the breadth of the role in mature corporations. So, for example, if you're a product manager for the Amazon retail website, which, FYI, just statistics, Amazon, the retail website must be having at least 200 to 300 product managers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Swati. Each product manager having very specific functional areas, such as the landing page or the checkout page, the entire checkout page must be having a product manager who constantly has to run the experiments on, what may be some of the areas where the customer must be facing friction, because you want to have the customer not only check out but also finish the entire transaction by paying for it and stuff. So the problem that product manager is trying to solve is, once the customer adds something to the cart, how can I really ensure that customer goes all the way and finishes the transaction by paying for the transaction? So that's that functional area for that product manager. However, in a startup, it's not only about product management, but the product manager could also be doubling up as, in business development or in, supporting sales. And there are lots of breadth of roles and responsibilities that startups have, just because the amount of chaos is much higher. Again, in mature corporations, the support system that the product manager may have maybe more evolved. You may have a program manager, you may have business analyst, you may have an engineering manager. In some startups, you may not even have any of these three, right? Like you may be the program manager, the business analyst, and engineering manager, depending on the resources that are available. P&L, which stands for profit and loss. Typically, only some organizations give you profit and loss ownership. So the product manager is sort of like a general manager, which is more of a trend in B2B companies rather than B2C companies. But in startups, there's always a CEO, and startups typically have more, B2B oriented startups than B2C oriented startups. But it's rare that unless the product manager is the CEO, and which is quite often the case, the CEO is the first product manager of the entire company, right? So in that case, there is a profit and loss ownership. Mature corporations, again, depending on the nature of the corporation, there may be more strategic contribution for a product manager, whereas in startups it maybe not. Mature corporations, there is more structure, so a product manager has to join and then conform, first of all, learn about the existing processes and structure, and then plug into those. Whereas in startups, you may have more flexibility to create your structure around you. And this goes into some general aspects as well, which is pay and benefits in mature corporations. And there are more standardized pay and benefits, whereas in startups, it depends on the exit strategy of the entire startup, right? Sort of not reading the entire slide, I'm sure most of you have read the entire slide. There's the entropy and the cross-functional influence, which we talked about before. The second part of it is, just understanding the B2B segment versus the B2C segment. So the distribution of the product may be more with the channel partners in B2B. And it also goes with the selling cycle of B2B. So typically B2B companies, because it's organization dealing with another organization, you typically, all B2B organizations start developing relationships with the executives of the target customer organization. Whereas in B2C companies, the end customer is your only stakeholder, right? So there is not as much of the relationship aspect and relationship building in B2C, but that is significantly getting disrupted right now because a lot of B2B companies which are really prominent and which have become prominent lately have become so because of the ease of selling. So Slack, for example, right? It just disrupted all Zoom. It disrupted the entire video conferencing and the business communication industry because first of all it was very easy to use. Secondly, it was very easy to sell, and this goes into sales strategy as well. But essentially those aspects aren't far from the product manager's purview as well because it all consolidates into one entire giant piece of complexity that has to be simplified. Let me see which. Typically, B2B companies have more travel. B2C companies, you don't travel that much. You need to travel you used to travel pre-COVID era in the B2B companies because you had to go to the customer location and talk to the customer. And of course, in B2B companies, the last part is there is always more technical jargon. There always, because it's very nuanced to a specific customer segment. So you see, that's the biggest, learning path for, product managers too when they join a B2B company, especially something that they're not trained in, right? I'll pause again here for any questions. Let me just take a look at the chat window. So Ayush asked, what are the major sectors? what are the major sectors that have PM profiles apart from hardware and software? That's a great question, Ayush. It's so when I joined business school, when I graduated from business school, and this is I use this anecdote for telling the story, but to many people. But there's in the US there's an equivalent of nuts.com, which basically is to sell dry fruits to end customers, and this was entirely about supply chain and everything. So, and one of my classmates went on to become a product manager at nuts.com. And the running joke that we had was, man, this person did an MBA and then he's selling peanuts after doing an MBA, right? It's not just hardware and software. Product managers are essential wherever there is a slightly complex customer need or a pain point which needs to be unpacked, unbundled, and basically used to deliver some solution to the end customer, right? In these times, more often than not, even if you're not a technology-oriented company, you're a technology-enabled company. Most companies these days are technology-enabled in some way or the other. But the use case may be in supply chain operations. I don't see the role typically in finance other than the parts of finance which are just fintech, which is very the entire historical finance does not have product managers, but the new blockchain and that particular industry has lots of product managers involved in that aspect as well. But essentially, wherever you see a customer need that is unmet, either in B2B or B2C, and an organization which is focused around that, and there's some engineering involved, you see product managers in that area.
Hello, Akshay.
No other new. Yeah.
Hello, Akshay. This is Manik. I'm taking mechanical engineering final year. So a basic question from my side is that how is the product manager is different from business development? Like in the earlier stage, like if we talk about the initiating the product, they are doing the same thing, like finding the product, market, and how to go strategy. And these are the things product manager has to do also. And I expect that these are the same things to be done by the business developers.
Absolutely. So business development typically does not involve as much about building the product and engineering interfaces. Product management starts from business development, and significant part of the product manager could be business development as well. But business development, the way that it's historically defined, is you're looking for newer avenues and newer customers to sell the product to, and typically the business development role is also seen more in B2B industries, where you're looking for customers who you have never touched before as well. So from that perspective, there is some nuance difference, but the core aspect of it is a product manager oversees why, what, and how, and goes through the entire process of not only the vision of the product, but all the way from the vision to the launch of the product. Business development may just look at what new avenues to sell the product to, and then inform the product manager so that person can leverage that information and then use that for building the product.
The follow-up question in this is that is the business developer is a more of a decision maker person?
Actually,
it depends. Yes, go ahead, Karthik.
And Akshay, maybe you want to touch upon the differences in culture between US and India, like from what you've heard.
So the first part of that question is, Manik, it depends on the organization. A lot of organizations are engineering driven versus sales driven versus product driven, and it all depends. Now we are entering the territory of the especially for slightly mature organizations, the power dynamics that are involved there in every organization. But it's like essentially the product manager historically has touch points on that, but it's not that business development. These roles, there is no clear line cast in the stone that this is where a product manager's job ends and this is where a business development job begins, right? So these are very fuzzy lines drawn in the sand, and these are constantly redrawn with respect to the resources. But don't think of it as these definitions being standardized, across the entire industry.
Thank you.
Right. And the second part of the question that Swati mentioned was, and Swati, maybe you can get to that as well. I'm going to hand it off to you right now, on the nuances between India versus the US, and how these organizations differ. Let me see if I have any other slides. Oh, this is the last slide. And I'll just let you, while I'm going through the questions, I'll just let you read the slide. But these are some questions to consider while evaluating any role in product management, especially if you're like the company's a startup, and like these questions also govern as to what the specific role will be like for any given company. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions on these as well. I'm just going through the questions to see if there's anything that can be answered.
Cool. Akshay, as we go to the questions, I'm going to take a few that I've seen. I think there was a question early on: does MVP also apply to FMCG sector? I think Akshay briefly touched upon it. So yes, so when I was at IDB, PNG used to be a big recruiter called chemical engineers, and I have friends who would tell me that, hey, like they would come up with these new flavors of chips, and before they would productize it, which is basically building the whole manufacturing lines to produce in mass quantities, they would do some quick testing to see if a particular flavor was resonating with the customers. So yes, MVP also holds significant in FMCG because FMCG is all about your customers, right? So you want to get some validation from customers before you start manufacturing in huge volumes. I'm going to take another question by Bhaumik here, which is basically about how would you explain product management to 12-year-old, right? It's a great question. I'll take a first dig at it, and Akshay, maybe you can pitch in as well. But Bhaumik, like I would tell that 12-year-old that I, as a PM, make products. I make products like Apple Watch or WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever the product is, right? So as the term says, like you as a PM are responsible for the success of the product, and success of the product is, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot going on underneath the iceberg. Right? You saw the whole PDP process, the product development process, and it's extremely complicated. It's very chaotic because you're working with tons of like stakeholders to get the product launched into the to get the product launched to customers and launch it into specific markets. Is it still not clear, Bhaumik? Like, so maybe Akshay, why don't you take a dig at like how do 12-year-old?
To a 12-year-old, like I would just ask the 12-year-old to point to any product, and I would say, okay, it's not only the strategy and everything that I did for this product, but also the jhadu katka, bartan kapda, everything for this product, like, is what I do, like, right? So it's not only the sexy aspect, but every aspect to just ensure that thing gets shipped at that particular time, and really it's meeting a certain customer need, like, and that product or whatever product that there is actually brought to the market. The ownership aspect of it, that's the product management.
Cool. Take the next question by Khyati here, which is, how is B2B and B2C product management different in India? Could this be explained with an example, please? I think that's a good one. So let's see. So firstly, B2B versus B2C differences are the same in any geography, whether it's US or it's India or any other country, right? But let me take an example of something that maybe you're all familiar with. So if you think about Amazon.com, can anyone tell me who are the customers of Amazon.com?
It's both the sellers and the buyers.
Perfect. So, who was it that I think Manik?
Yes.
So Manik said it. It's both sellers and buyers. So it's a two-sided marketplace. So when Amazon has to make or build tools on its website to onboard sellers and to give them the right tools to ensure that they can set up pricing, they can add their inventory, they can get payments when customer pays for it. They can give a refund. Basically, if you think about the whole seller journey, Amazon has to build tools for it, right? So B2B is business to business product. That's B2B. So in this case, when Amazon is tending to the needs of sellers, it's building a B2B product for making sure that sellers have the best experience. So now B2C is business to customer. So so now on Amazon you have buyers like you and me, right? So we go to Amazon, we browse for products, we like something, we add it to our wish list, or maybe we add it to our cart and check out. So that's the whole buyer set of experience, right? Like I read reviews, I don't know, like I may look at some of the questions, and then I pay for maybe I pay for it by using my credit card, or I get a guy who comes to my home and then I pay him in person, right? So that's the buyer experience. And then when Amazon is thinking about all of that, it's building out the consumer side of experience, right? If you think about just WhatsApp, right? What is WhatsApp? WhatsApp is primarily used. So WhatsApp is now slowly becoming a two-sided marketplace. There is WhatsApp business and there is the whole like consumer platform, right? So when you think about like messaging your friends, family, or you think about video calling, or you were sharing photos, it's all B2C product features. And whatever WhatsApp is building for the businesses, like for onboarding businesses, maybe they'll have reviews for payments. I think payments is still not there in India, but when it comes, that's a B2B product feature. So I'm going to stop here, and hopefully, Khyati, that's clear. If not, please ping again, and we'll get back to the same question again. I think how relevant is an MBA for a PM? Maybe that's a great.
Maybe say that for the next slide, Swati, because we are directly addressing that. There are a couple of other questions too. So Harshal asked, like, can you explain the differences between the hardware product management and software product management, the view of the difficulties faced during the development? I would say the biggest difficulty, Harshal, is, in managing, first of all, the upfront costs. The hardware product management requires you to bring a specific product to the market. And when you bring it to the market, it will have to be the finished product. Software product management has the luxury that you can keep pushing out new releases every time there is an app store update, for example, in your phone, a new product is coming to the end customer. Whereas for hardware, you need to invest that much of resources in really ensuring that the chip design is perfect, the whole design is perfect, it has been used, tested by the end customers, and then there's a specific launch date. Everything has to align till that specific launch date. So I think that's the biggest difference, the release timelines, where you can have more granular timelines in software, but the margin for error is very, very less in hardware product management, right? So it all builds up to one big release step. Shashank asked, suppose data says only 55% people like feature X of my product, so what should be done? So this typically, question, Shashank, is typically asked before you even build the feature, as to what is and this is answered at the level of what specific need is this feature going to solve for the end customer. It's a very, all customers don't need to like all features within a product. But what you want to do is you want to ensure that at least one standard deviation or two standard deviations of the customers, have, or use a specific, part of the entire product. So if you just see Facebook, for example, there are so many aspects of Facebook. I'm sure most of us have not even explored it, but, there's Facebook groups, there's even Facebook mentoring. Like you can actually sign up for a mentor in Facebook, but not everyone uses it. But does that mean that, it should not be there? Like 100% of the customers don't need to like a specific feature before you bring it to the market, right? With that, Swati, I think we have a bunch of content to cover as well. So I'll hand it over to you.
And we can get to the questions. So keep the questions coming in, guys. We will, as we stop at the next section, we'll take more questions. So let's get into some of the common myths. I get a lot of LinkedIn or requests asking me to talk about product management, and then I just find, like, through my conversations, I found out that there are so many myths prevailing about product management. So hopefully we'll clear them up for you guys today. So I don't know how many of you have heard this, but it's a very common quote. Oh, product manager is the CEO of the product. As the CEO of the product, you get to make decisions. That's not true. I think of product manager as servant leadership, right? It's a heavily cross-functional role. So you want to work with all of your cross-functional stakeholders from design, engineering, marketing, sales, legal, privacy, to make sure that everyone is aligned on your decisions. You'll make so many decisions. Should we use hamburger menu? Should we use tabs? Who should be a customer segment? Why are we going towards this customer? There are tons of decisions, right? And if a PM starts making all of the decisions or calling all of the shots, then the PM will not be like you are in. I mean, if a PM is doing that, the PM is in it for the short term, right? So it's a role where you have to influence your stakeholders without a lot of authority, and that's why I bring those donuts, because you will have to rally a lot of your stakeholders to keep working for you when you will not be directly managing them. Right? Like your engineers report to your engineering manager, your designers will report to your designers. So a PM is not the CEO. It's a lot about influencing indirectly. The second question that I get a lot is, hey, do I need a CS background to become a product manager? I don't have a CS background. I am a chemical engineer, right? So, and I have many friends at Facebook and Amazon who come from humanities or social sciences background. So there are, as we spoke earlier, right? PM has lots of flavors, right? There are many different types of PM roles, depending on whether it's a B2C role, if it's a B2B role, early product role, whether it's for the data infrastructure product role, whether it's a growth PM role. So you definitely don't need CS or coding background. If you have one, yes, it's helpful, right? So let me talk a little bit about what happens as a PM. How do you interact with your tech counterparts? So as a PM, you're expected to weigh in on the trade-off of picking a specific technical architecture. And then you as a PM are expected to weigh in based on your understanding of the product roadmap. Hey, in future, let's say Facebook Messenger wants to make it more private. Let's say I, as a PM, I want to make it more private and safe for end users. Then I would be thinking about end-to-end encryption. And I'd be talking to my engineering counterparts about, hey, like, do you think that the architecture is flexible enough that in 5 years from now we want to be able to add end-to-end encryption? Right? So it's a PM weighing in on the trade-off of picking a technical architecture depending on the product roadmap. But I as a product manager, I'm not coding features for my product. I'm only thinking about what do customers want, what does the long-term look like, and based on that, I'm working with my engineering partners to make sure that we have the right infra and the systems and architecture in place. I think someone asked in the chat, do you need an MBA to become a PM? So an MBA helps you to pivot into any career, right? Like you can be an engineer, get your MBA, and you can switch to consulting or IB, or you name it, right? You can switch to most business roles after getting an MBA. Similarly, after getting an MBA, you can definitely switch to becoming a product manager, but MBA is not a must-have for becoming a product manager. Similarly, like there are tons of certifications going on. There are lots of startups coming up with new certifications. Be a little worried. Make sure that you're getting hands-on side project experience, because when I look at resumes of PM candidates or aspiring PM candidates, I just make sure that they have these soft skills. Soft skills are extremely important for PMs. And then I also try to look for any side project experience. A certification doesn't say as much as a side project experience. So to be careful when you're picking these certification classes and make sure, if at all, like you're looking at those, but you don't definitely don't need an MBA or a certification class to become a product. I'm going to so all PM roles are built equal. Like I think we talked a lot about it. PM varies a lot depending on the company, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Last but not the least, a product manager only ships cool and fun features. So yes, so I think we had a picture of a janitor, right? So PM has to basically do everything. Like I, as a PM of, let's say, Messenger, I would ship really cool AR stickers for taking selfies or for video chatting if the customers really want that. And along with that, I would also be shipping basic, let's say, search functionality within a messaging product, right? So I as a PM have to think holistically about the table stakes features. Like table stakes basically means something that a customer really always expects from a product, as well as what will really make this product successful. You have to work on all features, not just bias or over arch towards one set of features. Okay, cool. These are all the myths, but a few things to note are that while you're not the CEO of the product, if anything goes wrong with the product, PM is held accountable. If the product fails, PM is held accountable. So that's why it's a really tough job, right? You don't have any authority, but you still are answerable for the product. Yes, you don't need a coding background, but it's good to know how systems work, what is the backend architecture, and this is something that you can learn on the job. You don't have to have a background in it. You don't need MBA or certification to becoming a PM, but you're expected to analyze data and make decisions based on analyzing data. All PM roles are not the same, but let's say if you have domain expertise, let's say in autonomous cars or in messaging platforms and personalization, it definitely helps you. Let's say even if you have experience from an engineering or an analyst or a design perspective, it definitely, that domain expertise helps you to get into PM roles. And then a PM needs to have a bunch of different skills, a repertoire of skills. It's just not a specific kind of skill. It's just not data analytical skills. It's also tons of soft skills like communication, stakeholder management, inspiring your team members. And I will get to that in the next slide. But just pausing here to take any questions.
There were a few questions related to MBA from the form that we floated earlier. So, are there any specialized master's program to break into PM roles?
Yeah. So when I think about PM, I think about so let me start with this, right? So breaking into PM has multiple paths, right? So you can be an engineer. You could be working as an engineer for a couple of years, and then you can transition from that engineer role to becoming a PM. Same thing where you can be a data analyst, you could be a front-end designer, you could be...
you're addressing that in the next slide, right? So maybe we can just,
Let's just wait on that one. So Yesha will later in the next slide, but are there any other questions that I can help answer in the meanwhile?
I'm answering to the questions on chat, Swati. So maybe in the interest of time, you can just continue the presentation and I'll field the questions that are here.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right. So let's see. So moving on to the next slide. Akshay, can you? Yeah, perfect. I think I was just talking about it, right? So there is no single path to becoming a product manager. Right? You can transition from sales, from BD, from design, from and from business analytics, from data science, from engineering to product management. I think product management is a lot about having soft skills, and the reason I say that is because you have, whether you like it or not, like you will spend the whole of your day in lots of meetings, meeting all of your cross-functional stakeholders, right? And the real work, I mean, once you from 8 to 6, maybe you're in meetings, and after 6 p.m. you're doing like other, like your real PM analysis and what, writing your requirements and writing your product briefs and whatnot. But it's heavily anchored towards soft skills, right? So customer empathy, you really need to be able to empathize with your customers. Okay, what's the journey like? What do they want? What do they need? Like, what do they not like? What are the pain points? Stakeholder management, like Rajesh Khanna and Bawarchi speak in different languages. You have to do that, right? Depending on whether you're speaking to a lawyer who's upholding the privacy requirements, you will have to change your language. If you're speaking to designers, you talk about, like, you use a different language. If you're talking to a BI, if you're talking to a VP, you have to adjust your language depending on which stakeholder you're speaking to, and you have to manage your stakeholders. You cannot fight with your stakeholders. You have to bring all of them along, right? And you have to figure out what works for different stakeholders. Communication is extremely important because you and your team are making lots of mini decisions, and everyone, like from engineers to your directors to it and your VPs, who want to learn about the latest updates, what's the roadmap like, what's going on in the product. So like I send weekly updates to my manager, who then sends it to like the whole broader team. But like communication is extremely important. Like always over communicate, not under communicate, because people get upset if you feel left out if you don't tell them what's going on. Inspirational leadership, we talked about this, right? Like think about this. You as a PM are saying, hey, I'm just taking the example of WhatsApp because I really like it. In WhatsApp, the next thing that we're building is ability to add stickers for Indian audience, right? And I'll say things like, hey, like because India is our largest customer, we have maximum customers, and let's just build features for India. But how do I inspire everyone in the team behind that cause, right? So leadership, like getting your team to believe in your cause and rallying along the team is extremely important. And this just comes from experience. Some people are natural born leaders. Other people just learn by making mistakes. And I fall into the later category. Structure, as a PM, you'll be running into a lot of these meetings. You'll be like, hey, should we do this or should we do that? What should we build next, right? And then how do you take ambiguity out? So thinking about structure, like, okay, like let's look at the strengths and weaknesses. SWOT, like there are multiple frameworks, right? I'm happy to share these frameworks later on, but always have some frameworks to help the team break down an ambiguous issue into simpler paths so that they can tackle the simple paths. Analytical job. Yes, as a PM, you're expected to analyze data, not only to drive your roadmap, but to make day-to-day prioritization calls. It's extremely important. Execution is basically jugaad in India, right? So you, as a PM, have a timeline. You want to launch features, let's say by December 2020, and you have your team, right? Like, how will you unblock your team? How will you help an engineer? How will you help your designer, etc., to make sure that you can get things done and you can launch a specific product or a feature by a given timeline. Last but not definitely least, business acumen. Like as you're building products, you're also thinking about, hey, like how does this add to the top line of my company? How if the goal of the company is to make money, how is this product making money? If the goal of the product is to acquire more customers, how am I acquiring customers? What is the business model, right? Is it ads-based? Is it subscription-based? So business acumen is extremely important, and you don't need an MBA to get this, to develop this business acumen. Cool. Just pausing here for any other questions, Akshay, that you may want to take from the chat. We can just pause for a minute, and then I'm happy to go through.
I'm answering the question, so you can continue, Swati, in the interest of time, because there's a huge case study as well, so you can just continue.
Yeah. So maybe actually, like I was just thinking that we can cover the resume tips and and not do the case study because we're not able to finish it.
Okay.
So
sounds good. So, but you can continue. I'm answering the questions on chat itself, so that you have enough time to cover all the content that you have planned.
Cool. Because it feels like I'm just speaking, and I just want to make sure that people are following along and they don't have any questions. Okay, cool. I can keep going. So
yeah, if anyone has any questions regarding like breaking into PM or specific, like this is a good time to ask those questions as well. If you already have some questions going on, so Alok is asking a question. So if you go on to chat, then I think the last question is relevant to breaking into PM. Swati. And the question is, how does it help companies to have multiple rounds of interviews? And do you know of any companies where they have made less number of interview rounds recently? So yeah, you can basically talk about the interview process, Swati, and do you see the trend being more and more interviews or less and less?
Yeah, so let's see. I can speak for the US market. There is a heavy growing interest in product management. There are a lot of people who want to become product managers for multiple reasons, right? Because it's the intersection of technology and management. B, you get to define the product vision, which is super interesting, like considering like the business goals and what do customers want. And number three, I think it also like pays relatively well in the US market. So the takeaway is that there are a lot of people who are trying to switch into product management. So there is a very high supply of candidates of the PM role. And just because of that, the interviews have started to get even more tougher. There are multiple rounds of interviews. So let me break it down. So I think there are interviews for large companies. We refer to them as FANGs: Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. And there are interviews, let's say, like, I'm just bucketing them all, but of course you can like further categorize, but let's say from startups to small and medium-sized businesses, right? So for the FANG companies, the interviews are very structured, like they follow a very specific format, right? And what's the format like? I think on a high level, like they ask for three types of questions. The number one is product design or product sense. This is basically about how can PMs take a very broad statement and really focus on the MVP version of that statement. To how do they analyze and how do they break it down to something really small and something like an MVP. So, for example, the question would be something on the lines of how would you build a mobile phone for blind people? Or how would you build a music product for Facebook? How would you build a new health product, right? So now when I think about this question, like health product, it's pretty broad, right? Like, is it mental health? Is it physical health? Is it awareness? Is it there are multiple ways to structure and break it down, but that's your product design or product sense. The other bucket is execution or metrics based questions. So they'll say, hey, like the traffic on the Amazon.com has decreased by 40%. What do you do as a PM, right? So that's about analytics. How do you as a PM break down the 40% number? How do you analyze it? Like, do you look at the geos? Do you look at the mobile? So just how do you break it down to really come to the root cause in the shortest number of steps and with causing the minimal disruption to your engineering and the BIP? And the last bucket is the behavioral, right? I'm sure you guys are preparing for behavioral questions because that's with every interview. How do you work in teams? How do you resolve conflicts? How do you motivate a team? Those are all those soft skill based questions, and we refer to them as behavioral questions. Cool. So that was a little bit about like FANG interview format. The format for startups is more varied. I think they do a lot of rounds of interviews, number one, and they assess a lot for the fit, and the interview preparation style just varies. And I'm going to, I can get to it towards the end of the presentation, but I just want to end by saying that.
I can give a nutshell for startups. Typically, startups, have a higher barrier because there is no real structure. Like in these startups, I've seen startups typically give more, real problems faced by them as prompts to candidates. And this is becoming an increasing trend. And this also goes to, the question that Alok asked, which is, is the trend towards less and lesser interviews? No, the trend is towards, more intense interviews where you're even given prompts, you're even given a project to work on, so that you can, prepare a presentation and you can actually, give a guideline. If you were a product manager, how would you address that specific issue? So expect anything from cases to behavioral to real, problem solving for the company itself, and giving recommendations. Back to you, Swati.
Cool, awesome. So let me share some of our tips and resources on breaking into PM, right? Let's say, so I did my MBA, but I learned about product management through the books. I learned it from the books of Decode and Conquer and Cracking the PM interview. There are tons of other books, but these are like the holy grail of product management. And if you're serious about a career in PM, I would highly recommend these. Second thing is there are tons of product communities within the US, within India. Some mostly Slack, and I'm seeing some Discord communities as well. But the Louis C. Lynn Slack is superb, and you will find a lot of PM, a lot of people who are practicing for PM interviews, and you can meet up with them and practice case studies, which just helps you prepare for your interviews, not for the job, but it helps you prepare for the interviews. I think the third thing is just start talking to people, and PM varies a lot. Like we talked about, there are multiple flavors of PM. So if you're interested in working for a company, reach out to people from the company and learn about the PM job. Right? What does the PM role look like in your company? What skills should I be working on? And so start building your network, both within the company, wherever you're going next, as well as outside the company. If you are preparing, let's say, for an interview with Google, then you want to make sure that you understand, okay, what are some of the pain points of the company facing, what are some of the challenges, and you want to prepare your interview and responses to make sure that A, you convey that you're aware of the challenges, and B, you have the skill set to tackle some of the challenges of the pain points. I think know your own brand, PM person, because I think this just comes with more experience. So I'm going to skip this one. The easiest way to break into a PM, for example, let's say you're going to go join a engineering company, or you're going to go join consulting, or whatever it is, try to make a lateral move because you already built credibility with your colleagues, with your manager, and this is the easiest way to transition without directly breaking into it or getting an MBA or building something on the side, etc. The other thing that I found really helpful for some of my friends is to shadow PMs in the company, right? And PMs are so busy. So I was pretty impressed with this one person who was in operations, and he basically offered to help me out with analyzing some data and writing some requirements. And the best way to get a job is to start doing the job. So if you are in a company and you find PMs, develop good relations with them and offer to help them out. you guys know about this, working on a side project like building a website or a mobile, like makes you think a lot like a PM. You just think about, okay, why am I building this website? Who are the customers? What do they want? And things like that. Last but not the least, like as a PM, I always think about, okay, what do I like about Apple Watch? What do I not like about Slack? To start thinking about, like, start putting yourself in the journey of customers and start assessing or evaluating a product, and that just helps sharpen your mind. And of course, like stay up to date with some of the tech news, etc. There's lots of like avenues for that. I'm happy to follow up and share some of those resources. Cool. So with that, any other questions on this slide before we move on to the next thing?
Nothing really. We're almost out of time, Swati. So maybe not the. Maybe do you want to cover the product design framework, or do you want to skip that, or is there something?
So let's see. So we want to cover the resume.
Let's see what. Sorry, go ahead. Do you want me to navigate to a specific slide, Swati?
Yeah. So let me think about this. So maybe we can just cover the resume tips, and then like just open it up for Q&A so that people have time to.
Is there a slide later on for that?
Yes, I'm just going to share Akshay for resume slide.
Sure. We are sharing, so should I stop sharing, Swati?
Yes, Akshay, I think it would be great if you can stop sharing.
Perfect. On you can start sharing.
And like Nisha and Krishikesh, like let me know if you guys want me to do that case versus resume. I thought the preference was for resume tips, so but please let me know if that's
yeah, so we can first go ahead with the resume thing. And okay, Dinesh, really sorry, but we have been receiving few requests for resume. After we are done with resume, we can like briefly cover the case if time permits.
Perfect, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
All right. So on resume, right? So so number one, so let me cover some of the format content under the best practices, and then we'll go to some do's and don'ts, right? So I think number one is that people are extremely busy and they don't have time to go past the first page, right? And I'm sure you guys have lots of great experiences, but prioritize what you want to show in the one page that you've got and bring down the content to one page. Akshay and I have more than 10 years of experience, and we have to really think hard about, okay, what do we really put on our resume? Like, which company are we applying to, and what's relevant to them, right? So always shorten your resume, keep it to one page. Instead of paragraphs, use bullets. Again, it's about like how quickly can the other person skim through the resume or read the resume, right? That's why you want to use bullets. I think just in terms of formats, this is a typical format that I've seen, like a quick summary, the experience that a person has, side school projects, education, and skills. And skills are mostly hard skills and not soft skills. Skills are things like, oh, like I know Python, or I know the Jira tool, or I know the Balsamic tool, some of these hard skills. And then the last bullet under format is consistency. Like I think cannot emphasize this more. Like by consistency, I mean same font format across the whole resume. And let's see, not a lot of colors. I've seen these brand new resumes with like pictures and colors, but I would say keep it clean, keep it consistent. Like maximum, I think I touched more upon the fonts and the formats in the next slide, but consistency is extremely important. Just in terms of some of the content that I would recommend in the resume slides, all of you guys must have LinkedIn URL by now. So make sure that you have the LinkedIn URL. These days, recruiters and even like the hiring managers do a very quick check on LinkedIn profiles before for quickly assessing on whether they should move forward with a candidate or not. When you talk about when you write bullets under your experience, you want to highlight what you accomplished, right? For example, build a website which for traffic of millions of users in less than a week. That's an accomplishment than just saying, hey, I built a website for shopping, which doesn't really tell me, okay, what did you accomplish by building a website? The side projects are really important, specifically for aspiring PMs, because through side projects, you communicate that you have the initiative and you have the drive to do something on the side besides your main role or the main experience. We talked about this: add hard skills over soft skills. Let me see. Just quickly pausing there before I move on to the next slide. Are there any questions on the slide?
No questions, Safi, but I think there was a request to get into the case as well. Do you just want to give the skeleton of the case and not get into the details?
Yeah, we can do that. We can give the skeleton of the case and then okay, cool. Let me just
walk through it, very quickly.
Yeah, let me just quickly go through this and then we can get into the case. Cool. Some of the do's and the don'ts, right? So I think the don'ts, let me start with don'ts, right? So one size fits all. Like if you're applying for a role if you're applying for the consultant role and the PM role and you're using the same resume, that's not going to work, right? You will want to tailor your resume to the type of role that you're applying, and always look up the job description and see if there are some keywords that they have in the job description, and you can add similar words in your resume. I think don't use a lot of fonts, don't use fancy colors, don't use a lot of different sizes. Keep it relatively simple and clear, so that it's easy. Your goal should be, okay, what am I trying to communicate to my hiring manager and how quickly can he or she get to that, right? So you want to keep it really simple. And we talked about experience, right? Instead of listing all the responsibilities, I did X, Y, Z, and everything, you want to get to the key accomplishments very quickly. So whenever you think about whenever you think about having a bullet in your resume, just think about why are you highlighting that bullet? What did you do, and how did you do, and what did you accomplish, right? So you always want to think about why did I do this, what did I do, and how did I do, and what impact did it have? Let's see. I think using action verbs is highly recommended. And as a PM, I use words like defined the product roadmap or launched a product feature to do blah blah blah, which saw a huge growth in few days, and it got so many customers and things like that. So action verbs like strategize, defined, built, launched, collaborated, increased the revenue, so you want to think about what action verbs you're adding in your resume. Let's keep going on. Okay, so I think this is just an example of what not to do. So in the first, under the don't, you'll see someone says, experienced product manager seeking new position with a great company, take charge attitude, highly skilled in product development, design, leading cross-functional teams and product. The problem with this is that it's extremely generic, right? Like I'm not getting a sense of anything of the strengths that this person has. So how do we make it more? How do we quantify this, and how do we show the specific skills? I think that's the tweak in the do section. A highly capable PM with 6+ years of experience, seeking to leverage proven leadership and strategy skills to grow revenue at blah blah blah. Met 150% of the revenue goal. Led 7. So we can just see, right? Like the person now like talks about like how much growth they had, how many teams that they've interacted with, how much cost savings they've had, and they've just quantified everything, their past experience, so that it's very compelling to the person who's reading. Cool, awesome. So keep moving on. And Rishikesh, I'm happy to share this later on so that people can share the slides with the folks, because I'm not going through every slide.
Yes, thank you. We had one question. Okay. Akshay sir just answered that.
You can. So the question was around LinkedIn as well. So like beyond the resume, Swati, like maybe if you have any LinkedIn tips, then you can answer that too. Like my 2 bits on that is it's not just about your LinkedIn profile, what it says, but also how you engage with everybody. So getting eyeballs for that, so that you pull people into like, and of course, it's not about just posting content, but about posting relevant content that people may find useful. So,
yep. I'm going to first finish this one, and then I can cover any of my LinkedIn tips. So I think like this bit is about active and passive applying, right? So a lot of people, I used to fall in this category. I would just go to LinkedIn and just click easy apply. I would not customize my resume. I would not have a cover letter, and I would not have done any informational interviews. Right? So just think about this. There are lots of people like me applying to this role. Right? How can I differentiate myself? So what I've recently started doing is I've started reaching out to people from that company. Like I look at my friends network, and if I don't have my friends, I ask my friend who may have a friend working there, or I reach out. If sometimes I've just reached out, sent cold emails on LinkedIn, like asking for just 15 minutes of someone's time. You don't want to make a very heavy ask. And then like I just try to understand what's the culture like, what are they trying to solve, and things like that. And then based on that, I write a cover letter and I customize my resume. And once I submit it, I follow up with the recruiter or the hiring manager if I have that contact, right? So just a little bit of difference between active and passive applying. Just be more proactive and manage your journey of getting a job. Like before you apply, which is doing some informationals, to what you do after you apply. Cool. I mean, everyone has a different strategy for managing like how they're applying. There are some like tips here on that, and that's all. With that, maybe we can switch to product case. But before that, are there any burning questions on resume structuring before we go to the cases?
Swati, there was one question on hard skills. So maybe you want to touch on that as well.
Oh, cool. Can the person talk about? Can you speak? Can you inform your question?
Hello. Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Ma'am, actually, I wanted to ask that what kind of hard skills should I include? Let's say if I'm applying for a finance company which is into payment products. So, but I'm not sure whether what kind of coding experience or what kind of software that they use behind the product. So, what kind of skills that can I use? Let's say I have some credit specialist. I am aware about the product front end only, but not about the back end. So, what kind of hard skills should I include in my resume if I'm looking for the role at such company?
Yeah. So when you say front end, then if you can communicate that you know some of the design tools, let's say like Balsamic or Figma or Adobe, if you have those skills, like you should feel free to highlight those. Also think about like as a fintech PM, like what are they using within the company for managing those standards, right? Like maybe they use Hello, maybe they use Asana. So if you already know like what they're using, and if you before you can highlight those process or organizational skills in your resume. And like I think you talked about you have some certifications. I quite did not catch it, but like if I had a CFA certification, let's just say, I am signaling my domain expertise through the CFA level 1 or whatever level it is, right? So I would put that down. So hard skills are more like the tools that you know, the languages that you know, the software that you know, the certifications, the legitimate certifications that you've had. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
All right. Ma'am, actually, just one point, if it's fine. Software is a major concern which I'm not very comfortable. You pointed out CFA. Yes, I have CFA. But what kind of the route that these fintech companies are looking for, what kind of software that they are looking in my resume, I myself am not aware, and I'm not sure whether I can learn also my job.
Yeah. So I think so. Firstly, know that as a PM, you will learn. So every company is different, right? So you cannot really like learn all of the tools that they are using ahead of time, right? So PMs learn a lot of the skills or the tools on the job itself. But like maybe you know what? Like one thing that you can do a skill is you can find friends who are working in that company and we ask them, hey, what tools do product managers use? Maybe you can like pick up some of the. You don't really need to do this, right? I think CFA as a certification is an extremely good signal already that you have domain expertise. Tools are easy, right? Like they're intuitive, you pick them up. So I don't think a company will not select you just because you don't have a specific tool experience. But a suggestion would be to talk to your friends or people who work at the company and ask them, hey, what do product managers use here? Right? Like you pick up a design tool, you can pick up an organizational tool, but it's all a nice to do. I don't think you have to do it to get an interview call.
Another thing to consider is that for CFA, like these are very different worlds. So when you're talking of CFA, that's actually for the financial aspect and financial analysis, whereas product management is more towards the tech side. So like these are very different skill sets and different worlds. So it's always good to also reach out to the company beforehand and ask them, what hard skills should I have? Like they really appreciate that. So rather than just blindly getting something which may or may not be relevant, especially if you do this much before your interview, that can really help.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for the time.
Cool. So we have about 12 minutes left. I can quickly switch to the case and cover the framework, but we will not get to the case itself. So let me take 5 minutes to just go through the framework and the case that I had in mind for all of you guys, and then we can just do some Q&A in the remaining time. So let's do that. Cool. Can you guys see my slide?
Yes, ma'am. You can see it.
Swati, I don't think it can be heard anymore.
Yes, sir. I guess it's facing some network issues.
Swati is just reconnecting. I think it will be give it a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Hey guys, sorry, like the Google Meet crashed. Let me go ahead and share again. Cool. I'm going to repeat this. I don't know how much you guys heard when I was speaking about this, but product design questions are all about taking a really ambiguous statement of designing something and narrowing it down by applying structure to solve the specific case, right? So the first like line item is comprehend, right? Whenever someone gives you a case, the case could be something like, hey, build a product for fitness in India. Let's say someone gives you that product case or prompt. First question you want to do is understand more about it, right? So first question you will ask is, hey, why are we building this? Why are we not building a retail website? Why are we building a fitness market, fitness product, right? What are the goals? Like, are we trying to make money? Are we trying to get more customers? Like, why are we really doing this, right? How does it align with what our company is already doing, right? You want to look at market trends. Okay, what is the fitness industry like in India? Like, are people like even going to gyms? Is working out at home more popular? So you want to look at, okay, what's the industry or what are some of the market trends? And then like, who are the main competitors? Oh, like PureFit is one of the biggest competitors. Like, what are they doing really well? So you want to look at some of the key features and what is making them really successful. And then you want to size the market, right? Like, you want to make, let's say, my goal is to make revenue from building a fitness product. I want to size the market. Hey, like, India has a population of X of this. How many people can I estimate will be fitness? Let's say India has a population of X, and people between the age of 20 and 50 are more oriented towards fitness. If I'm building a digital market, let's see how much is the internet penetration, and so you basically have a structure to estimate, right? So you figure out how much is the market, how much revenue am I really looking at, and you're making some assumptions here, right? Like, it's just a ballpark estimation. You won't have all the data, but this is just a first level estimation of, okay, what is the total addressable market even looking like, right? What is, if we are successful, like how successful and how many customers are we going to get? So first step is just comprehend, right? Like, understand more about why are we wanting to do this. The second like step is identifying customer personas, right? Because if you build a fitness product for everyone in the age group of 20 to 50, it's a pretty broad like market. There are multiple customer personas. The thing about product management is you want to really focus in, you want to identify, okay, which customer segments have the most pressing need, right? Like, for example, I could build a fitness product for kids these days just because there are kids at home and parents want to engage them while they're working. Or I may want to build a product for slightly older segments, right? So you want to define, okay, where do we think we can make, like, let's say if my goal is to make money, right? Like, where do we think we're solving the biggest pain point, and which customer segment is willing to pay for it, and things like that, right? So you want to identify a specific customer persona. And then once you identify customer persona, then you talk about their pain points and their user needs. Like someone from an older segment, like let's say one of the pain points is as a 55-year-old woman, I am not very tech savvy, but I still want to do fitness activities. So so that's a pain point. You list on all of the pain points, and then you figure out what's the most important pain point that we should solve. Once you figure out your pain points, you come up with solutions, and then you have limited resources, so you again have to think about, okay, which solution, you have to look at the benefits versus cost. You have to do the benefits versus cost analysis and pick the MVP solution to validate your hypothesis to solve a specific pain point in that segment. And then there is like the wireframes and the success metrics. all of that which you do before you actually build an MVP. The question that I had for you guys today that we could not get to, I was hoping to do this with you guys, but how can we help out mom and pop shops during COVID-19 times? Right? This is the question prompt, but with that, I'm going to stop. We have 4 more minutes. We can go 5 over, but let's get the questions going, guys.
Yeah, at this point it's better to unmute and then just like ask the question on the speaker itself.
Yeah, hi. Akshay, can you hear me?
Yes, Rahul.
Yeah. So I was saying, like, when we say about, as in, like, I heard from so many people, and I think the same, that product management is a mindset thing, okay? So when we think about a product, as in, like, Facebook or WhatsApp, does, as a product manager, it only mean for me features or also, like, a design part? Because I heard, like, okay, product owner is someone who handles more of the technical things. So how much should I should be very good at those things.
So you're talking about the mindset and what it takes to be a product manager. Is that right summation?
Yeah, my stress point is that I should be really good at UI UX as well, or what, right?
Actually, I can take the question actually. So just to so number one is so taking a step back, a PM is a highly cross-functional role, right? So in an ideal scenario, you have your product designers who will work on the wireframes and the design part, like for the desktop and for the mobile. And then you have engineers who are going to implement that, right? So where do you come into the picture? You are the one who's defining the requirement. Okay, let's say it's a messaging app. Hey, as one of the requirements is to be able to share photos or videos or do a video call, whatever. You're defining all these requirements, and then you do reviews with your design and engineers to make sure that everyone's perspectives are brought in. And once everyone agrees to that spec, then the UX team will go and build off more. And then you'll just feedback to them, hey, I think like this is not a very simple interface, there are too many clicks. You'll give them feedback and there'll be iteration back and forth to the designers and the PMs. And then once you're happy, those wireframes will be passed on to the engineering team to implement it and build the product. That's your ideal scenario where which is where you have bigger teams, which maybe like specifically the fan organizations, you mostly have product designers, you have your separate engineers. Now within startups, right, like you don't have a lot of headcount. Depending on the startup, if it's building a front-end user product and you are the PM for the front-end user product, maybe it's just good to have some of those skills, right? So that you can quickly do some prototyping on your own because you may not have a fully fledged design team. So Alok, like in nutshell, it depends on which company you're applying to. And also, like, what is the specifics of the role? Is it a back-end role, front-end role, infra role, growth role? And depending on that, you may want to decide, hey, I may want to build these skills. Right? And also, it's about your interest. And if you really enjoy design work, like, there are tons of classes that you can just take and build that as a skill set. Like, you don't have to do it without knowing the company and without knowing the specific role. Hope that helps answer.
Yeah, I got it. But it really depends on company to company culture, the role.
Hello, I have one question. Like, you explained that PM needs a lot of skills. So it takes time, and like one way is to get into a project or do a job, so that we can acquire these skills by experience. But that will take a lot of time, and maybe to apply into these, we need trials. So what basic skills should we focus on in all of this lot of skills too?
I can take that question, Swati. So typically, if you look at the product development process, there are various different components on strategy, market research, really, the program management parts of them, and finally rallying the stakeholders with leadership skills and everything like that. Of course, you don't, and that's why product manager is typically, a senior role in a company. But a good inroad is to, there are roles such as associate product managers too, where you're not the only single point of person, but you are also assisting the product managers and getting a foot into the door. So there are, if you highlight market research and all of these topics that I just mentioned, these are individual subjects which you can dive really deep into. So market research and analytics, there's a whole different world which is specializing in market research and analytics. Like market research involves primary market research, and secondary primary market research means seeking out data personally, which is through your own means and measures. So conducting surveys, reaching out to the customers through qualitative means, through one-on-one interviews and stuff like that. And then collating all of this data to make some insights. There's as much of art as much as science in it. That's the starting point, but strategy formulation is another part. If you're in a highly competitive marketplace, using concepts such as in game theory and other aspects like that, it could be really helpful as well. Program management, agile project management. If you're looking at software specifically, agile project management is very useful as well to just understand how do teams work together, how do large teams work together to really deliver value, and what's the organization hierarchy that is needed and the support structure that is needed to get that to happen. Those are some good areas to understand as well. But essentially, if you have all of these different parts mixed together, and if you show that you're basically an all-rounder rather than you basically should want to talk to people. It's a very outgoing role. It's a very highly collaborative role, and if you can show those aspects to it rather than showing that you are a person who likes to do individual work, I think that really helps.
Thank you, sir. So we'll be taking one last question. If anyone has it.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ritik here. My question was regarding case studies. So by case studies, do you mean that no, case studies, not side projects. So by side projects, do you mean that I develop a whole new application or website which solves a particular problem, or I make some suggestions on improvements for a feature on an existing application or product and make a case study towards it?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think ideally, so there are different flavors of side projects, right? So I think ideally, the best experience would be, let's say, Ritik, you can make a team with a team of engineers and designers, and you guys brainstorm a problem statement, and then you figure out what problem you want to solve, and then you come up with some of the key use cases. I mean, you define your customer persona and the use cases, and you come to the stage where you to make wireframes, right? And yes, in an ideal world, if you have the team ready, they can build a minimal MVP, either through a mobile app or a website. I think that's the best case scenario. But in the absence of that, at least having a portfolio, maybe where you can say, hey, I analyzed this problem and these are the decks that I made. Even that still shows that you have product thinking and you care about the speed and you've taken taken the extra mileage to go do something about it. So best case, make a functional prototype, but if not, having just balsamic or some wireframes or even presentation, basic wireframes in a presentation, that's also good enough.
Absolutely. And it's not about making something yourself as much as about having an opinion on what should be made. Because as a product manager is not an engineer, and a product manager is not expected to, even code actually. So it's basically facilitating and enabling the ecosystem to ensure that they have direction into what they're doing. So it's more about being the visionary as well as the leader to make it happen.
Okay. Thank you so much, Swati and Akshay.
With that, maybe we'd just like to extend our thanks for spending your time with us. I know it's really late in the night, so really appreciate all the questions that are coming along our way. Like, we really enjoyed the session, and we hope that you guys will reach out to us if you have any questions. Like, you can find us on LinkedIn. We're also we have a website called the Next Chapter website, which I think we can share the link. We can share the link with you guys. But just want to thank you guys. And
I shared a chat already.
Oh, cool! Awesome. Yeah, I'll just stop and I'll let Akshay also say his final remarks.
No, that was perfect. Yeah, really excited. It was really exciting to talk to you all and answering your questions. It's this role specifically of a product manager only has been around, I would say, for the past 10 to 15 years. Google was the first company to start a product manager role, and since then it has just caught on and expanded into most of the tech industry. So of course, there's a lot of information that may not be out there, but things are moving at a very fast pace, and it's becoming a very standardized role. But it was great answering your questions, and good luck for steering your career if you find it something that catches your eye.
Thanks a lot for the session, sir and ma'am. We'll be sharing that link from our social media platform soon. And thank you for having the session so interactive and nice. Thank you for taking out the time.
Cool. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information.
Thank you, ma'am. And sir, it was really great having you here, and we really enjoyed the session. And it was very insightful for people who have been just got to know about PM, and then also the audience who are in their second year and don't know much about PM. And I think that it's a pretty good start about the niche domain that has been developing in India, and that may be the reason of the less number of participants that we had today. But it's a very niche domain, at least in India as of now. And I hope that we can collaborate further to improve the culture itself in IIT Bombay, if we can. So, yeah, thank you so much. We're really glad to have you.
Cool. I think we're equally pleased, and the honor is ours. And we'll try to find a more friendly time the next time we do the session, and hopefully we can do the case session the next time, because now all of you guys know about the basics of PM and should be ready to solve cases.
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
झालं. हाँ